Hey everyone, this is Kunal, CTO of OpenWater, and in this video I'm going to share with you the various ways that OpenWater and Zoom work together. So starting off, I want to say that back in March of 2020, when the world was quite a bit crazy, OpenWater was the first and only option for running large-scale virtual conferences for associations. It was quite a chaotic time, but we were able to move conferences that had typically physically in hotel rooms, 100 in-person sessions going on at any given time into a virtual world literally overnight. I mean, we're talking 5 or 6 days to fully transfer a conference from physical to in-person. And at the time, everyone was stuck at home and everyone was watching all of their content from home. And, if they would have gone to a trade show for 3 days, they would have spent 15, 16 hours sitting behind a computer, but that was okay because society was kind of closed. All you could do was go to the grocery store, and it made sense at the time. So over 2020 and 2021, we ran over 200 conferences over this platform. Somewhere over 100 million minutes of participant time was logged through the platform. And in those 2 years, there was a lot of innovation that we had done. There's a lot of innovation in the marketplace. And today, there's literally hundreds of different options available to running conferences. But I think the one thing that is clear is that we don't need to move conferences at the scale we did in 2020 into a virtual world. We have virtual, we have hybrid, we have fully in person, we have people that never want to look at Zoom again. So we've looked through these options and we've figured out what is the way forward for our customers, what is the way forward for our organization, our staff, and so forth. So we figured that over time we're going to continue to see innovation in the conference platforms. And we want to make sure OpenWater remains a strong player with regards to the intake of content and the display of it. So today's presentation is going to cover the 3 ways that we work with Zoom, whether it's the Zoom Events product or whether it's the Zoom core product, the meetings and webinars that you're all used to by now. I also want to add that this is an advanced use case for OpenWater. You should already be quite skilled with OpenWater and have a lot of OpenWater experience by the time that you decide to add this use case on, right? This is not 2020. We're not in an emergency or in a crisis anymore where it makes sense just to use whatever the option is that you have on the table. You should really take the time to have your organization learn what the OpenWater offerings are and hire qualified professionals if you can't train up your own organizations. So events are hard, and this is a picture of a recent event we had done. But when you're at a physical event, you could see the complexity of the technology, right? You have the people in the back of the room, you have the people in the TV truck, you have the people in the command center, and you can see them walking around, and you really see a show of force to help you run your event. A lot of that is still needed in a virtual world, but it's behind the scenes. So we've worked with a variety of players in the space, including Bellwether, Projection, and Encore. And they're skilled with using Zoom, they're skilled with using OpenWater, and we're now providing all of that training to organizations that use OpenWater and to their partners. And once again, these are just some of the partners that we've worked with in the past and that we hope to continue to work with. So what are the options going forward? Well, Zoom released a product called Zoom Events, which I'm going to dive into a bit more today. There's also the option of using Zoom by yourself without all of our automation, which means that you have your own Zoom account, you're setting up meetings, and instead of emailing meeting links out, you could put those meetings into the OpenWater gallery. And finally, the offering we've had since 2020, the fully automated Zoom within OpenWater, that remains something that we can continue to do. But we believe that that's what should be used for very large scale events, and some of these other options may be much more cost effective for smaller events. So let's dive through them. Zoom Events is a great platform for small events. Small events means that typically no more than 2 or 3 things going on at any given time. So if we use the word concurrent sessions, typically no more than 3 concurrent sessions, and typically no more than 10, maybe 15 different items going on in a given day. Now the limits are higher than that, but that is really our recommendation. About 10 to 15 things going on in any given day, no more than 2 or 3 days. That's what makes Zoom events a really, really good platform given the cost. Zoom events is very, very inexpensive, and we'll cover pricing in the next section, but it's very inexpensive. It's something that you could administer with very little learning, very little training, and one person can manage an event. Zoom events, as I said, is cheap. Zoom Events has built-in registration where you can charge ticket prices. It also allows you to import people from Excel. So I just keep hitting on the fact that it should be used for small events, given the price point that it is. I don't think that anyone in the market, including OpenWater, can beat Zoom Events. And we have a free integration. If you buy OpenWater, you could easily export your data into Zoom Events. Once again, we'll cover that. The other two options are for larger events, and they're similar options, and I'm going to dive into the nuances of what the difference is. So both of these options are going to use the OpenWater gallery. In one case, you are going to set up your own Zoom links for each session, and then you're going to plug them into the gallery on your own. If you do that, you'll save substantial cost. You'll also not benefit from any of the automation, but we figure that the automation saves about 1 hour per session, but there still is a lot of work to do when you have the automation. So an option that we're adding on here is similar to pretty much everything else that's out there, which is if you want to do it yourself, you could just copy and paste 100 times, and you could put the Zoom links in there. The learning curve here is also not much because for the most part, you're trading automation for doing the work yourself. And after you do it 1 or 2 times, it's easier to do it, 100 times. The cost is a bit more than Zoom events. And if you look at Zoom's pricing, you'll see that they charge a bit more for running these kinds of events yourself, but it's still relatively cheap. In this option, we do support single sign-on with your association management system, and of course, you can also use Excel. Uh, Another key difference when you do it yourself versus using the Zoom Events platform is that there's better support for hybrid. At least where we are today in April of 2022, Zoom Events is only virtual. It's really not going to be a good product for hybrid, but Zoom in a kind of a do-it-yourself fashion is good for hybrid. And then the automation that we provide through OpenWater that is allowing you to run very, very large events with lots of changes last minute. The real difference between do-it-yourself and Zoom automation is that if you knew nothing was going to change the days leading up to the event, you could do everything do it yourself, right? You could set up the Zoom rooms, you could copy and paste the links in, and it's set and forget. But what's really nice about the automation is that as you make last minute changes, you're updating one place and OpenWater is then updating everywhere else. The learning curve when you're making a large scale event is very large. So maybe we could say that the learning curve for the Zoom automation is large, but the reality is that when you're running a large event, there's a lot of learning, a lot of steps you need to take, a lot of practice. So maybe I'd argue and say that it's not so much that the automation has a large learning curve, it's that when you're running a large event, there's just so many things that you need to be aware of. It's not for the faint of heart. It is expensive, not only from a software point of view, I'm talking about from a total cost of running an event point of view. You need quite a few technicians, whether they're your own staff that you're training, or whether they're technicians you hire. There's just a lot of cost with a large event, and we don't like to have any hidden costs. So what we say is that it's just going to cost a lot of money. It's not for the faint of heart. At the same time, there are no other solutions on the market that can handle large-scale events. If you want to run an event that has 100 concurrent rooms, at least at this time, there is no other product on the market that can do that. So while we do expect these other tools to get cheaper over time, we are continuing to provide our automation to do those very large-scale events. All right, let's take a look at the user experience for the 3 scenarios. When you're using Zoom events, you'll still have a conference website of your own, and this example will take the OpenWater user conference. You still might want to have a website that showcases sponsor information, and maybe there's still an in-person component. But for the full virtual component, you want to add a link to joining the virtual side. So here you'll see we just added a button that says Join Live Event. That'll load up the Zoom lobby experience. If they don't have Zoom installed, they'll be required to install it, and it works on the iPhone and Android. This is an example of the Zoom application when you're using Zoom events. There's 3 sections once you load it up. The first section is a live stream of what is being presented currently. So someone who's just participating and doesn't really want to be active and maybe they want to toggle through all the sessions that are going on, there's a TV channel-esque interface which allows people to look at what's going on in a live stream format and toggle between the channels. There's also a global chat room and lobby where people can talk about what's going on in the various live streams, and then you can have sidebar conversations by double-clicking on someone and having a one-to-one chat or a group chat. From there, there's also a sessions gallery. So here you can take a look at the interface of that, where you can see what is going on. You can scroll through the sessions, and then within a session, you'll see either a start button or a join button, depending on the role of the person that's logged in. When I want to cover now the next use case, which is using do-it-yourself Zoom links with the OpenWater gallery. So this is the OpenWater gallery. Hopefully by now you're accustomed to it. You can see the days of an event, you can see the various time slots, and you can see everything that's going on within the time slot. Speakers and attendees both can browse the gallery to find the appropriate sessions. And when a session is found that they want to participate in, there'll only be a link to join the session for an attendee. Now this will be a link that you provide to OpenWater to insert into the gallery, or you can of course copy and paste it into the gallery yourself. But this could be a link to Zoom. It could be a link to anything. It could be a link to WebEx. It could be a link to Teams. But presumably, since a lot of us are comfortable with Zoom, it'll be a link to Zoom, and it'll take them to the Zoom join experience, which in this case is filling out your information, and then you register for the event, and then you automatically get brought into the event. The key difference between the do-it-yourself Zoom experience and the automated Zoom experience is that the do-it-yourself Zoom experience will only allow attendees to join. There's no additional automation for speakers. For speakers, you'll have to send them, speakers and panelists, you'll have to send them their Zoom join information via email or via direct link through a chat or any other way that you communicate with speakers typically. So it's just a great way and a low-cost way of consolidating all of the Zoom links for a large-scale event into one cohesive gallery experience. But there's not a lot of automation around that, or rather there's no automation around it. So if things change, you'll have to update links, you'll have to resend emails to panelists and presenters. Let's now talk about the Zoom automation experience with OpenWater, and this is what people should be used to if you've used OpenWater anytime in the last 2 years. The first step is a virtual badge service where an attendee or a speaker will enter their email, and then they will receive a magic link which will authenticate them into the conference. The virtual badge service can plug in behind the scenes to your association management system or to your event registration system, such as Cvent, to know if that person has been registered. If they're not registered, they'll be prompted to register. Once they're in the system, OpenWater will recognize who they are, and it will know which meetings or webinars they are a speaker or a panelist for, and everything else they're simply an attendee for. So like the do-it-yourself module, the Zoom automation experience also uses the OpenWater gallery. The first step is exactly the same. They can browse the gallery, favorite sessions, and ultimately browse one source to find out where they need to go. Once they're in the session, the difference here is that the join button will either be join as host, join as panelist, or it'll just be a regular join meeting or join webinar as an attendee. There's no further registration step needed. They're taken directly to Zoom, already authenticated into the right role. The other difference with the automation is that after the session ends, about 30 to 60 minutes later, the recording of the session is automatically captured and brought into OpenWater. Now, most customers opt to edit it before displaying it on the website, but there is the possibility of having the material uploaded into an on-demand gallery as soon as it's available, including the closed captioning. In addition to that, OpenWater also captures the join and leave time for all participants and provides that into one consolidated report. So it just makes life a whole lot easier when it comes to after the event, what you do with the information. The experience for the attendee, as you can see, is not too different whether you're using Zoom events, whether you're using the do-it-yourself Zoom links, or whether you're using OpenWater. From an attendee's point of view, they browse one cohesive hallway to find their sessions and to access materials. The big difference between the three is what it's like for you as the conference administrator, what it's like for speakers, and what it's like for technicians. That's why I say if an event is really small, the use of the OpenWater gallery may be overkill, right? You're paying OpenWater and you're paying Zoom. You're just doing a lot of steps for what may just be a very, very small event. When it comes to the do-it-yourself option, and I think in the next slide, yeah, here I share the time savings between the two use cases because they are very similar, right? For an attendee, you're still going to the gallery, right? One more step to join a meeting is not really worth the cost if it's enormous here. So I'd say that if your event is less than 100 sessions in total, it's already going to take you a long time to set up the event. Is an extra bit of time per session worth it just to get the automation? And although 100 hours or 100 hours of savings seems like a lot, you have to ask yourself, do you really need the recording capture? Do you really need the reports? Are you going to have a lot of last minute changes? If you are, we will certainly save you 1 hour per session between the prep and the post event. But if your event is typically set times, very little changes, we might only be saving you 15 minutes per session. So it's a judgment call on your end, but I would say absolutely if you have more than 100 sessions going on, Zoom with our automation is worth the extra cost. It's worth the time to learn it because it will save you a tremendous amount of time when you actually execute your conference. So let's just take a look at the differences side by side. So the speaker access, when you're using do-it-yourself Zoom links, it's up to you to figure out how speakers join sessions. A lot of people keep an Excel file where they have all of the speaker links handy and they can send them, last minute. With the Zoom automation, you're really just focused on one access link to the speakers, getting them access to the gallery, and then the gallery takes it from there. Attendee access, there's really not much of a difference other than OpenWater can automatically recognize and put people and capture their metrics after they participate. But I would say once again, for the attendee experience, there's minimal difference. Another area where the automation shines is the technician access. The Zoom automation provides a centralized dashboard so you could have a handful of technicians oversee dozens and dozens, up to 100 or even up to 200 simultaneous things going on. With the do-it-yourself Zoom links, you have no choice but to assign one technician to each session. There's no real ability of technicians to float around and to barge in and to help out when necessary. Now, I say that with an asterisk because what I can tell is that even for these very large-scale conferences, there still typically is one technician per room. So while there is a potential for cost savings, what we've found in the field is that typically people just have the budget. If you're already running a large event, you already have the budget to have one technician per room. So is there a cost savings? I think it's once again up to your discretion to decide and to uncover. When it comes to the post-event stuff, it'll be up to you to go into Zoom to capture the recordings, download them, organize them, upload them wherever they belong as their final home. With the Zoom automation, there's no manual step there. So right there, you're not waiting for recordings, you're not uploading them, you're not then merging the captions. We're able to do all of that automatically. Similarly with the reports, once the reports are available in Zoom, if you have 100 sessions, there's no way of downloading one report that tabulates the data from all 100 sessions. You'll have to do that manually. OpenWater does that work and creates one master report, which you can slice and dice to figure out session participation across your entire conference. last minute changes, I mean, I'm talking about real last minute, like 5 minutes before a session starts, they're nearly impossible with Zoom links. And if they're happening a day or two before the session, they just take time. You know, you update something in one place and you got to communicate to the attendees, then you got to communicate to the speakers. With the automation, you update it into the gallery, and then within about 2 minutes, it's changed everywhere. So I'll leave the time saving up to you to calculate, but my opinion is that if you're using us for all of these areas, not counting the last minute changes, we're saving you 1 hour between prep and post event per session. And then with the last minute changes, you can't even measure the time savings because the other tools just don't support it. All right, well, thanks for watching this, and we'll continue along sharing with you the various ways that you can use these three scenarios in more detail.